Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Sheriff's Mic. I'm your host, Sheriff Corey Honea. I got a pretty cool story today, and I'm really happy to be joined by somebody who I think has a remarkable story to tell. It is a story about walking the road to redemption. It's an inspirational story. It's a story that demonstrates that no matter where you are in life, you can make some decisions and ultimately end up in a better place. And so today I am joined by Shawn Webber, Oroville City Council member, small business owner, aspiring change agent, and a bank robber. Shawn,
yes,
welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Now, first off, I just want to say, man, I just really applaud your courageousness. The fact that you're willing to come on to a podcast with the sheriff of Butte County and talk about your past and the challenges that you faced and the hurdles that you had to overcome to find yourself in a position now where you're a community leader. It takes a lot of courage. A lot of people would probably walk away from that or try to shy away from that. But that's never been my experience with you. You're open, you're honest, you're upfront.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. And I appreciate this opportunity to communicate this story. What an honor it is. And I thank you so much. Thank you for your work in the community too. You are a true leader. And we as a community really appreciate you.
Well, I appreciate that. And we've gotten to work together on a couple of things recently. And I think it's been for the betterment of the community. Sometimes when you're in those positions, you have to take positions that aren't popular with everybody, right?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you're trying to make decisions that will overall benefit the community. And I see you've done that, and you know that I've had to do that. So it's definitely an honor to be here. So I think where we should start is how it all began.
Sure.
And tell me, Shawn, what was your early life like? What led you down the path that you ultimately were going down that resulted in you robbing banks?
Yeah.
And what was that story like? Tell me about that.
Sure. So I was raised in the Bay Area, San Jose, and had a relatively good childhood, but I was also had a bit of a wild man as a father, and hardworking, flooring guy.
Okay.
So taught me how to get up in the morning and work hard and outwork everybody you worked around, and taught me great work ethic. But he also taught me some really bad habits, which was how to party real hard, because I watched my dad, right? As every young man does as a child, you look up to your father, and I idolized my dad in so many ways. So my dad was also, as hard charging as he was at work, he was also hard charging on the weekends. So I picked up a lot of great habits, work ethic. Like I said, I picked up a career that's served me well through my whole life. But I also picked up those bad habits, which were fun all through my 20s because I worked hard, I played hard, I boats and motorhomes, the stuff you do, just have fun, camping, RVing, whatever. And but progressively, my own alcoholism and weekend experimentation with methamphetamines and just having a little, it grew into an everyday thing.
Okay.
And then when that became, it became its own 800-pound gorilla in my life that I couldn't shake.
Yeah.
And so it went from me having a contractor's license. I got my contractor's license when I was 25.
Wow. And
I ended up having several guys working for me by the time I was 28 and making good money in the flooring business right here in Chico. And then it went from that, it progressively got worse where I couldn't function, I couldn't work because then I was just consumed by my own addiction, my own demons, if you will, that were just plaguing me. And so in the process, I had gotten married, had a couple of kids. My wife was struggling with her own issues too, because unfortunately she had some physical ailments that led her down a path of opioid addiction through a doctor here in Chico that's not practicing anymore. But that was back in the days when you could get anything you wanted with pretty much, ask and they would give it to you.
Sure.
So my wife had a huge opioid habit as well. And so our family was really struggling. And then that led to us being where I basically abandoned my work. And that led to essentially us being homeless. We were homeless, and not essentially, we were homeless, really desperate. And so the addiction became such a great beast of burden that I couldn't control it anymore at all.
Yeah.
So that's how I got to there.
your life sounds the story that you're telling me or the picture that you're painting for me really is your life is literally spiraling out 100%. Of control. And,
circling the drain.
And you're taking your wife with you.
And my kids.
And your kids. Tell me how many kids.
At that time we had 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. There was 4 and she was pregnant.
Oh wow.
When on my arrest date.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And I suspect at some point you're thinking, I'm doing to my kids what was done to me.
Worse. Everything that I desired as a child not to do, because I had determined as a young man watching my mom and dad struggle with their own addiction issues and seeing the results of that.
Yeah.
By the way, my mom was involved in some very, very violent relationships with some men. My dad and my stepmom, who are still married to this day, a long, long time, were it was a dysfunctional relationship, but it was never violent. Okay, and mildly dysfunctional. Sure. You know, but my mom, on the other hand, was with some downright nasty individuals that were very abusive toward her and me, and so that set a bunch of stuff in motion as well. But what was the question?
So, and it kind of ties into this, you know, this whole, adverse childhood experiences that is so prevalent here in Butte County. And you were a child with adverse childhood experiences.
Yes.
And then there's this cycle that's going on. Now your kids are that.
Yes. Thank you for reminding me. I apologize.
No, not at all.
But the motion, the repetitive motion that I wanted to break, I wanted to break the cycle.
Yeah.
And I didn't know how. As a young man, I determined, well, I'm not going to do those things. Well, then I ended up being worse than all of them.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
Which was weird because I was so determined not to be that way. And then I remember crossing certain thresholds. It was almost like caution tape in my mind of little barriers where I would say, okay, well, I'm not going to cross that. And then I'm going to be better than the next guy. And the next thing you know it, I'm ripping through that caution tape. And then I would set another standard out there further out. Okay, well, I'm not going to do that.
Got it.
And then I would rip through that one. And then I would be like, well, at least I'm not doing this. And then so it just got worse and worse and worse. And then before you know it, I'm on the run. I'm in Reno, Nevada. I've got my kids asking me what's going on, and we'll get to more of that.
Okay.
But, you know.
Okay. All right.
You know, but it amplified is what I'm trying to say. I'm so sorry I just hit the mic.
You're fine. Not a worry at all. Not a worry at all. So life is spiraling out of control. You're taking the wife, the kids down with you. You have the addiction issues, and you talked about at that point your business is failing.
Oh, failed. Literally
Done.
Failed. I had literally walked away from it one day, and I'm out of my mind on a job site in Kelly Ridge, and I was doing a carpet job and literally was just overwhelmed with everything. And I literally walked away. I left all my tools there and everything.
Really?
Yep.
Okay.
I just walked away.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have a vehicle at that time. I had somebody drop me off. I was installing carpet in this house, and I was so overwhelmed with everything, and I just couldn't even focus. And I just walked away.
Amazing.
Left everything in the garage and took off walking.
Really?
And that was it.
And never went back?
Never went back.
Never went back.
Yeah.
And at one point, so now you have no income.
Nothing.
You have no income, and it gets to the point where you lose your home.
Lose the home, all the vehicles, everything's gone. I'm on foot. I'm on bike. I'm on whatever. You know, I'm just desperately trying to get by.
What year was that? Do you know?
It was 2007, 8, 9, and 10.
Okay. All right. And so you were homeless for those 3 years?
Yeah, we were bouncing around. Didn't have a place to go. I mean, we'd find a place for a few months, but it wouldn't work out. We would occupy abandoned houses, stuff like that. But sleep in somebody's RV for a minute. But mainly it was just floating around. Me and my wife and kids.
Wow.
Yeah.
Shawn, I'm just sitting here. You say it in a really matter-of-fact way, and I appreciate that. But I got to tell you, there's a lot of people who would have had the experience that you had, be sitting here, and they wouldn't be able to retell it because of how traumatic that had to be. And so I think it's amazing that you can recount it. It's probably a testament to the fact that you worked through that, right?
Yeah.
And you are where you are today.
Yeah. It's only by the grace of God that I am what I am, and so there's a certain amount of trauma associated with it, but the way I look at things, I refuse to let any trauma from my past define my future.
I love that. I love that.
I won't, my childhood can't define me.
Yeah.
Nothing that I've done can define me.
Yeah.
The book is wide open still. Yes, I have a past, but we're looking toward the future and it's wide open. And I'm very hopeful for it. So I refuse to let that kind of stuff dictate the way I conduct myself.
Amazing. And that, I think, one of the reasons I want to do the podcast with you is I wanted that message to get out there, because there is a road to redemption if you're willing to walk it.
Yes.
Right? All right. So back to the story that we're at. Things are spiraling out of control. And so what in the world were you thinking when you decided to rob a bank?
I wasn't.
Okay. All right.
It was okay. So it was.
Walk me through that. How did that all? How did that all come down?
I was in we were living in an abandoned house.
Okay.
And for whatever reason, the power was on, so at least we had power in the house. So
All right.
I woke up one morning, no food in the house, no furniture. Of course, it was absolute chaos, and of course, I had just constant traffic of all kinds of undesirable element running through the house as well. Stolen cars, the whole 9 yards. It was wild.
Right.
It was just a wild,
People you're hanging with are fueling that whole lifestyle.
100%. And all the things that I wouldn't do before, it's like, like gunplay and all that stuff that was like taboo. I'm not going to do that. That was like every day now.
Okay.
It had grown into that kind of animal,
That moving a moral line.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Over and over and over again. And then with each movement to that line, I lost more of myself. And because of whatever self I was, whatever identity I thought I had as a child, because my mom did try in the middle of her stuff, she did try to teach me some moral compass stuff, right? Yeah. And I remember losing more and more of that little boy and realizing that I had grown from that little boy into a monster.
Okay.
And so I woke up one morning, Maria and the kids were asleep, and I was desperate. We were desperate. We didn't have any money. I'd already been doing all kinds of other different things and been involved with some guys with some marijuana stuff and whatnot. It was just not good. And I remember I woke up and I went downtown, and I went and hooked up with some people to try to get some dope, and I did. And they were all sitting there in this hotel room. It was the Motel 6 in Orville.
In Orville, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And they were all sitting around talking about how they were going to come up that day, like what the plan was, what they were going to do.
And when you say come up, you mean talking about how they were going to get the resources necessary?
Come up with money, dope, whatever they were going to do, whatever their scheme was that day, they were going to try to do.
Whatever that may be. Whatever the hustle that day.
They call it hitting the lick back in those days. What are we going to do? What's the lick we're going to hit?
Okay.
And so everybody was discussing the lick they were going to, how they're going to come up. And I was just sitting there listening to them, and I was thinking, and please forgive me, but I was thinking these people are lame.
No.
And I stood up and I said, well, I don't know what you guys are going to do, and I don't care. You guys are lame. I'm going to rob a bank. And I walked out, and I did.
And that was it.
And I did. I drove up to, and I knew that I didn't want to rob one in my own backyard. So I drove to, I believe it was Grass Valley was the first one I did.
Okay.
So I drove up, I believe that's Nevada County. And I drove up there and I cased the joint out, and it took me about an hour and a half to actually get the courage up. And then I had a really, really surreal moment where I kind of stepped out of myself.
Okay.
And it was kind of weird because then I was almost like watching me do it.
Yeah.
And then I just walked through the doors of the bank. I walked up and I told them this is a bank robbery. I slid a little note across and I said, this is a bank robbery. And that was it. She handed me the money and I was gone.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that was in what, 2010?
That was in early May of 2010.
Okay, 2010.
Yeah.
Did you have a gun?
No.
So it was just a note. Just a threat. The threat was all you had with that.
Well, I knew enough from doing a little bit of research that you didn't need a gun, and I don't recommend robbing a bank. It's not worth it. But I
agree.
but I knew you just needed a note. And you don't even have to be threatening.
Did you wear a mask? Nothing. You walked. I mean, it's not a great plan.
No,
it's not a great plan.
Well, it was. I already knew the inevitable conclusion that I was going to get caught.
Do you think maybe you wanted to get caught?
I did.
Okay.
Looking backwards, I did.
Yeah. You were.
I was
rock
desperate.
bottom, couldn't help yourself out, and you were looking for a way to.
I didn't know how to stop. Prior to that, let's reverse back a few weeks. Prior to that, I was out. My wife, and this is before we were in the house with the power that was still on. We were in Palermo at this point on a friend's property that. Near and dear folks, they're still to this day. I just seen them a couple of days ago, and I love them dearly. But they had offered up to help us, and we were staying out in there. They had a horse pasture, right? And we were staying behind their property in this little travel trailer that I had managed to get my hands on, and it was raining like crazy. I remember that winter just kept going. Spring just kept going, rain, and I had left Maria and the kids out there in Palermo at this trailer, and I was just out doing whatever I was doing all night, and I parked in the Church of the Nazarene parking lot. to just kind of rest for a minute. And I was just sitting there parked in this truck, and I must have fallen asleep because then when I woke up, the parking lot was full, and I realized, it must be Sunday. I didn't even know what day it was.
Got it.
And I thought, it must be Sunday. Church is going on. So I went in there, and I didn't know if there was a God. I had an idea there was a God, but I didn't know. And I went in there, and I was sitting in the back of the church, and a couple people that knew me came up, and they were like, "Hey, I'm glad you're here." And I'm like, "Yeah." And just kind of sitting there, and I was just listening, and I was critiquing.
Okay.
I was being critical because I thought this is a bunch of bullcrap, is what I thought.
Yeah.
I thought these guys are faking it. Whatever they're talking about, this isn't true. Yeah. But I said a prayer, and the prayer went something along these lines. I didn't say Jesus or anything because I didn't know Jesus, but I just said, God, if you are real, I need you. I don't know if you're real or not, but I need you. And I remember I said this to God because I feel like my life has become an out of control robot. And I'm at the helm of this thing, but I can't turn it off.
Yeah.
I'm in this thing, the levers and switches ain't doing nothing no more though. And it's just going on its own. And that's what I felt like. I felt like I was so out of control because things had become so violent violence used to be like an exception. Now it became the rule.
Got it.
Right? That was the rule,
Yeah.
and it was like, and it was so bad that I couldn't stop. And so fast forward to, you were asking about the, please forgive me.
That's okay. You're fine.
Yeah.
I was asking about the first bank robbery.
Yes.
And you said you fast forward to that. And
yeah. So I didn't know at the time, but there was a plan being put in motion to get me to stop, where I couldn't stop, but I was living out that plan and I didn't even know it. Does that make sense?
It makes 100% sense. And I will tell you this, and we've talked a little bit about faith, and I was with one of my guys not too long ago, and we were dealing with a situation, and it really sucked. It was a horrible situation, but we came through it, and we saw that, hey, there's some advantages to this, and we're going to be able to capitalize on this situation and move forward into a better position. And he made this comment. He said, sometimes God gives you what you want, but not the way you want it.
Never a more true statement.
Yeah.
Because when I said that prayer about God, who are you?
Yeah.
Are you real?
Yeah.
I had no idea it would go down the journey it went.
Yeah.
But I'm so thankful it did.
Yeah.
I'm so thankful it did. You, District Attorney Mike Ramsey, I've told you this before, and we could get into this more later, but you guys played a huge role in the road to redemption. Straight up.
Yeah.
Even if you never knew it, you did.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I do want to talk about that, but so how much did you get on the first take? First robbery, what'd you get? How much money?
I think it was $5,000 or $8,000.
Okay.
It was one drawer.
Okay. I mean, that's a decent lick for that day.
Yeah, it was, 20 seconds come up and boom, we were rolling.
Right. And so what'd you do with the money?
Spend it all on stupid stuff. I took the kids to Walmart, let them go crazy.
Okay.
I think, I can't remember. I think I bought a couple of cars.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which I one of them I robbed another bank, and then that car got impounded, and I had just robbed a bank with it, and I thought they were pulling me over because I robbed the bank, but they pulled me over because I had fake tags on it.
Okay, we got to get back to that.
Yeah.
So when you show up with all this cash, what does your wife say?
They were still sleeping when I got back. I had done it that quick.
Okay.
So I went and I'd done everything. Boom, 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 boom. I was gone maybe 2.5 hours, and I came back and they were still sleeping. And and I woke her up, and I had all this money in my hand, a big wad of money. I don't remember how much it was, to be honest, but I had a big wad of money in my hand, and I showed it to her, and she goes, "What'd you do?" And I said, "I robbed a bank." And she's like, "No, you didn't." And I'm like, "Yeah, I did."
Wow.
And she's like, "You're crazy." And I'm like, "Well, maybe I am. I don't know, but come on, let's go."
Yeah.
And so I went out and bought a big bag of dope, and because that was number one. Yeah, right. That needed
right.
to, and then we went and blew through all the money, and so then that facilitated the need for another one.
So how long after the first one did you do the second one?
I don't remember, but it was 4 in the matter of like 5 weeks.
Yeah, they were quick succession.
Yeah.
Remember that. And if I remember correctly, reading it, they were all Wells Fargo except for one Tri-Counties, I think.
Yes.
Yeah. So the first one was in Grass Valley. Do you know where the second one was?
Let me think. I don't remember where they were at, to be honest. Okay, Chico, Grass Valley, Lincoln, and there's one more. Yuba City.
Oh, that's right.
Okay, so it would be Grass Valley, Chico, Lincoln, Yuba City.
So the second one is Chico.
Yep.
And it's a Wells Fargo.
It is.
And where at? Which part?
What is that? Forest and
Yeah.
20th?
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Is that
Okay.
Is that right?
I think you're right.
Over by the Whitmire Auto Dealership.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. Exactly. I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
And I knew I did that one because I already knew that there was a parking lot in the back, and in between the store, there's a corner of the strip mall there.
Yeah.
And you got the Rayleighs.
Yeah.
And then where the corner is, there's a little walkway that goes to the back. So that's why I hit that one.
Okay.
Because I knew I could get out there before the cops responded.
Got it.
Yeah. And the Chico PD was pulling in the parking lot when I was leaving.
Were they?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, so on that one, was that the one that they pulled you over the car, or was it a later one?
No, that was like later that night. I was in Orville in that same car.
Okay.
And I got pulled over at about 11 o'clock at night going 55 or 60 miles an hour down Oregon Boulevard.
Wow.
And they pulled me over, and I'd manufactured a fake tag using, the tag was yellow, I remember. And I used, you're going to think this is funny, but I used a Captain Crunch cereal bag.
Really?
I cut it out.
Okay.
And then I took a picture of a good tag with a phone, and then I fabricated it with a Sharpie, and then I put a piece of reflective tape over it so it would reflect.
Wow.
Yeah.
So there we go. I mean, the ingenuity, the industriousness of that whole thing, right? If you just use your powers for good instead of evil, look where you go, right? Yeah, exactly.
Well, they didn't even pull me over because of the tag. They pulled me over because I was speeding.
Oh, hell yeah.
And then I had bought the car a few days prior to that with the money from the bank robbery, the first bank robbery. So here, it's a little like Honda Accord or something. Okay. And so they're asking me about this and that. Finally, they're like, hey, what's up with this tag? It's not even real. And I'm like, and I played dumb. I don't know. I just bought the car.
That's the way I got it.
And so here I am. I have about $5,000 or $6,000 cash in one pocket. I got about an ounce of dope in the other pocket. And my wife and kids are standing there. We're supposed to be shopping at Food Max. And they're like, we're going to have to impound this car. And I'm like, take it.
Right.
Who cares?
Right.
I'm like, that's fine. Take it. And my wife's like, what are you doing? They're impounding our car. I'm like, who cares?
Right.
Let them have it. Because I thought I was being pulled over for the bank robbery.
Right. You just want these cops to go away.
Yeah, just take the car
and go away. Yeah.
Yeah.
So same scenario with the second robbery. No disguise. No gun.
Nothing. Yeah. By then we had. By then we were moving around quite a bit. We were up in Penn Valley at that point, or in Rough and Ready, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, we were hiding out up there. And I had met this guy at the Gold Country Casino, and him and I were standing outside having a cigarette, and there was a big old fight outside, and we watched it happen, and then we struck up a conversation and figured out that we had common interests,
Dope?
Yeah, dope,
Yep.
yeah. And then so I ended up going to his house, and basically I just moved in. Poor guy.
Really?
His poor family, yeah.
Okay.
I just moved in, brought my family, and just moved in.
Okay.
And he didn't know what to do because I just forced my way in, basically.
Right. And he wasn't strong enough to stop that from happening.
No, his wife, sir, was not unhappy though. But I felt terrible. But anyway, I was up there, and which also that led to my arrest because they were tracking a bunch of stuff we were doing, and but I had already gotten rid of some other phones, and we were not using our EBT card, but I ended up using it up there, and that's how they figured out where I was at.
So do you think that were they on you from the second robbery, or did it take a?
I think so.
Okay.
I think they knew because I was getting a lot of reports back from people that were in the dope scene,
Yeah.
Like they were calling. That's why I got rid of my first phone because the people were calling me and they weren't know where I was at. Where are you at? Where are you at? Where are you at? And they're like, and then one was like, I don't know what you did, man, but you're hot.
Okay.
But nobody knew what I was doing because I wasn't telling everybody. But they knew I was hot. So what that told me is the police were on to me.
Yeah, they were trying to close the circle.
They were exactly.
Yeah.
They at least they thought I was a suspect.
For sure.
A strong one.
Yeah.
And so I knew that. So I ended up throwing that phone into the river.
Okay.
And I got a burner phone.
Okay.
And so I was just trying to cover my tracks as best I could. So
now the third robbery comes. You run out of money, same kind of thing.
Yeah, burn through it. Bam.
Buying
Instantly.
dope. Burning through it,
instantly. As fast as I would get it, it was gone.
And which again goes back to how out of control your life was at that point.
Yeah,
it was just right.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah,
going to Reno with the dope, with the bank robber money, stuff like that. Just going crazy.
Amazing. Mm-hmm. So the third one is where?
Lincoln.
Same kind of setup.
Yeah, I go down, case the joint out for a while. And that one's actually pretty funny, and it's a little bit embarrassing.
Okay,
but it's
fair
pretty
enough.
Funny because I walk up to the counter, and I don't know what she is. Maybe she's a Filipino lady, but she's small, she's older, and she's and so I tell her I slide the note over and I say, this is a bank robbery. And she slides it back to me and she goes, no, it's not. And I'm
Really?
I'm like, and I slide it back and forth. Yes, it is. And she goes, I'm not giving you anything. And I said, well, that's not how this works. So I think what she ended up doing is opening her drawer and she's like, fine. And she's totally like, telling me in very colorful language how much of basically a piece of crap I am.
Yeah.
But she's using very descriptive language, but she's whispering it, right?
Okay, really?
So she's maintaining her cool. She's not doing anything bad, but she's telling me how bad of a guy I am. And she pulls out a stack of hundreds and she goes, I'm not going to give you that much. I'm going to give you this much. And she like counts out $1,000 and she's like, take it or leave it.
Really?
Yeah, straight up.
Did you take it?
Oh, of course I did. I thought I was whooped. Are you kidding me? What am I supposed to do? What am I going to do? You're going to. This isn't negotiation time,
right?
Right.
And
so yeah, I took it. I walked away thinking, man, that was one strong-willed individual.
Yeah.
Bravo, good for her.
Yeah.
But she was not having it.
That is hilarious.
It is. And it's true.
You're right. Wow. I suspect the corporate policy is not to do that, but
no, she totally violated corporate policy and any federally insured bank. It is dictated because of Bonnie and Clyde and their behavior back in the day. That's how we got the federally insured banks because of Bonnie and Clyde, because they were killing too many mom and pop banks off in the Midwest, and they were being violent. So then policy became, don't fight them, just give them the money. We'll ensure that you're going to get your money back. Yeah. Right. So it's totally against policy, but she was just feisty. Yeah. She wasn't having it.
Wow.
So good for her.
Good for her. All right. And then you're back out. You got some money in your pocket and you're looking for a bag of dope and all the other things that are going on. Is that?
Yeah. And it's just, again, increasing, worse, going from worse to worse to worse. Me and my wife are being domestically violent with each other on a routine. Okay. I'm being violent with everybody I see.
Okay.
It's just, it was just horrible. I mean, at one point we're driving down the road, my wife's arguing with me and I threw something over the back seat at her and she stabbed me, and it's like, stabbed me. Like just crazy stuff, and it was like that. It was nonstop chaos all the time. Yeah. It just had gotten completely out of control.
And the kids are front row seat all this.
They're watching all of it.
Yeah.
Every bit of it.
Yeah.
Poor kids.
The meth, you think the meth is driving the violence?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because, I, like anybody, we all have a capacity, or we can be violent.
Everybody has a capacity for violence. Everybody does.
But I was not, I had grown up in some situations that made that, I had to do some stuff, but fundamentally, that wasn't who I was. I wasn't just naturally like violent. I would fight.
Right.
I was not afraid of a fight, but I wasn't looking for it. It was always like I was finishing it.
Yeah, okay.
But then it became where I was looking for it.
Okay. So I think we have one more robbery, right?
Yeah, Yuba City.
Yuba City.
Yeah.
And how does that one go down?
Okay, so by now I know for sure that the feds are looking for me.
Okay. How do you know that?
I figured it out from people just because I would dip into Orville and people would be like, man, I don't know what is going on, but the FBI is looking for you.
Okay.
And I just knew.
You know full well they're on your heels.
Yeah.
But you're going to do it again.
Yeah, because I had a plan.
Okay. Tell me.
So the plan was crazy, but it was the plan.
It's a plan. Let's hear it.
Okay. So I had made some contacts in Sacramento and LA and just various people that dealt with counterfeit money and automatic weapons, stuff like that. Yeah. Really, really high-end counterfeit IDs.
Okay.
So I had met and made some, because I was on as much as I was, the real thing is interesting, as much as I was on a quest to be the best contractor I could be at one point, then I became on a quest to be this. I was
the best outlaw you could.
Yeah, I was trying to make the best contacts. I wanted the best contacts for dope. I wanted the best contacts for, guns or whatever, right? I wanted the best contacts. I wasn't looking for these guys that were half step, but I wanted the best.
Right.
Right. And now I do the same thing with my life right now. I'm looking for the best.
It's how you focus.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I had made the plan and I told my wife, I said, obviously we're hot. We got to get out of here and we got to leave California. And so I devised a plan in my head, and you may laugh, and you probably will, and people that are watching may laugh, and I expect you to, but it's true. This is what I did. My plan was to travel across the United States, robbing a bank a week, and I was going to hit every major city that I had ever wanted to see. I wanted to see the Grand Canyon. I wanted to go to the Air and Space Museum.
Okay.
I wanted to see some of the Smithsonian museums in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
And then I was going to rob a bank and fund our
trip,
crazy meth-fueled bank robbery trip across the United States, me and my wife and kids. And then I was going to go down to the southernmost tip of Florida, and I was going to steal a yacht, and I was going to sail to Cuba.
Really?
Yeah, and ask them to take me in as a refugee.
Asylum.
Yeah,
asylum.
that's what I was going to do, because I knew that there was probably a strong chance that Fidel Castro and his regime might welcome that, perhaps.
Yeah.
And so I was going to try to do that. That was my plan.
So, I mean, it is a hilarious plan, but the fact is, in your state of mind, it sounded reasonable.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah.
And I mean, there's some humor to that, but I hear people who like have this desire to travel to every major league baseball stadium and watch a game.
Yeah.
Right. And it's kind of the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
I'm going to hit every state. I'm going to do these, big things, and I'm going to fund it with bank robberies.
Yeah. Why not?
Why? well, why not?
Why not? Yeah. Well, and you're right, because in that meth fueled like insanity, right, and the lack of a moral compass, it was gone.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, so what is off the table and what is on?
Right.
Like
right.
It's all negotiable at that point.
Yeah.
And so that was my plan. It was a plan. Oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you, I was going to head into LA and get all those fake IDs. I had even told my kids, start figuring out a new name, because we're going to have new names in about a week.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And so, so they were figuring out what their name, they were all excited and picking out names, and we were going to do this thing, and I was going to use a vehicle from one town to the next and get another one. And just buy burner phones and burner vehicles and just make my way.
Amazing.
And, but yeah, as crazy as it is, that was the plan.
And so one last bank robbery to kick off the plan.
Or
we're there. The last we did was going to kick off the rest of it.
This is the day.
Yeah.
So I told my wife, I said, this is what I'm doing. I'm going to Yuba City. I'm going to hit this bank. You guys stay right here. I'll be back in a couple hours. I was Yuba City to Orville and then back to them.
Okay.
Why Orville? Because I was going to the Dope Connect, because I had called the Dope Connect and said, how much you got? And he said, and I quote, I got more than you could afford. And I said, I doubt that.
Wow.
And I said, hold it all. I'm coming.
Okay.
And so I went down there, I hit the bank. I got about $10,000. And I thought, well, that's a good start. That'll get us to LA. We'll get our fake IDs and we'll hit the road. And so from Yuba City to Orville, and that was the plan. Driving a Suburban at this point that I picked up.
Okay.
And driving down the road, brand new pack of cigarettes, listening to Sublime on the radio.
Okay. Okay.
And I rolled into Orville, and that's when I seen the federal agents had me.
Really?
I rode right by them.
Okay.
And they had a device, because there was a tracking device in the money. I didn't know it.
Got it. Okay, exactly. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so when I seen them on the side of Lincoln, I was at about Lincoln and Virginia, somewhere in that right there. And I seen them on the side of the road with what looked like a radar gun.
Okay.
And they were doing this. And when they radared me, he slapped the driver of a car, and I watched him mouth the words, "There he is."
Got it.
And I knew that I knew. And I looked over, the money was sitting next to me, and I fanned out the money, and that's when I seen that. The money was all just in a pile next to me.
Yeah.
And I fanned it out, and that's when I gassed it, and I took off.
Okay, so now you're running.
Now I'm running.
Okay.
And I'm heading north on Lincoln into town.
Yeah.
And I come as you're familiar with Lincoln, and Lincoln kind of does like this, and it goes up, and then okay, and about B and C and A right in there, that's when it comes up by that old gas station.
Yeah.
And the whole road was completely blocked.
Okay, with cops.
Everybody.
Okay.
FBI, sheriff.
Okay.
OPD, Fish and Game.
Okay.
They were all there.
Right.
Everybody.
Everybody came.
They all knew I was converging on that point.
Exactly.
And so they were all there. That was April 1st, 2010, April Fool's Day.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. As a matter of fact, I think, and you probably met him, one of my captains was a deputy back then, was there.
Yep.
Ready to receive you, right?
He was.
Yeah.
He was one of the ones. And also there's please forgive me, lieutenant that works for Mike Ramsey now, real great guy. What is his name? He was the responding officer to the Yuba City.
Oh, is that? Yeah. I know. Okay. Yes.
Yeah. I passed him on the way out, and if he would have gotten a proper description of the car, I literally drove right by him.
Wow.
As he was pulling in, I drove right by him.
Yeah.
But he was looking for a different car.
For sure. Okay.
But yeah, him and I are friends now.
Amazing.
Great guy.
Yeah.
And but he was the responding officer to the Yuba City. So your officer's responding up here. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And I know all of them. They're great guys.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So you get arrested, booked into the Butte County Jail again.
Yep.
And then what happens?
So that was the moment where it was April 1st, 2010.
Yeah.
I rolled to a stop cops behind me, cops to the side, cops everywhere, guns drawn. You know how they do.
Yep.
And rightfully so.
Yeah.
And they come rushing up to the car. They're pounding on the window. And I reached up into the visor and I rolled it down to grab one last cigarette. And I told the cop at the window, he's got a gun drawn on me. And I said, I'm going to smoke a few drags off this cigarette and then I'll pop this button. And he's telling me I'm going to break the window. And I'm like, do what you got to do. So I light the cigarette up. But on the visor, my son, who was, he was 7 at this time.
Okay.
He had written me a note that morning.
Okay.
And on the note, it said, I love you, Daddy.
Oh my
and I put it up in the visor. And so I said, I love you, Daddy. So when I rolled the visor down and the cigarettes fell out, there's the note. And I'm faced with this and my heart just breaks.
Right.
Because then the weight of everything that I had just did, all of it came crashing down in one single moment. 13, 14, 15 cops around the car, guns drawn, yelling at me. I'm lighting this cigarette. I'm looking at this note from my son saying, I love you, Daddy. And I took 2 drags off the cigarette. They're getting more aggressive as they should.
For sure. Yeah.
And I clicked the automatic doors and boom, out the door I go and I'm on my back.
Yeah.
And they're handcuffing me and there's a gun to my head. And one of them, I don't know what officer was saying, he said, you do not move because I will shoot you. Because and I'll never forget, he said, you're far too big for us to mess with.
You're right.
And so he said, I will shoot you, I promise you. And I said, I'm not going to move. And so in that moment, that was the defining moment of this entire journey. That was a big moment right there.
Yeah.
Because I knew that they were going to take me into your facility.
Yeah.
And I knew you guys were going to interrogate me. I knew exactly what was going to happen. And so as they're handcuffing me up, I made the decision right then. I either clam up and say nothing and don't say a word and fight this, or I'm going to walk into that interrogation room and I'm going to admit everything.
Mm-hmm. And?
I was done.
You're done.
It was a wrap, man. I was done. Like I got
amazing. I see goosebumps on your arm right now.
I mean, I was done.
Yeah.
Because the weight of what I did, the reality of it all facing me in one single moment, my sons, my wife, the baby in her belly, my family, my mom, my dad, everybody that knows and loves me, all of it came crashing down at one singular moment. And the weight of it was so unbearable that I couldn't even bear to think about trying to game the system anymore. And it was a defining moment. Either I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that. And I chose to be honest for the first time.
Yeah.
And so when they started, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Well, it harkens back to that morning in the Nazarene church, right? When you said, I'm out of control.
Totally.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
2 points I want to talk about. And, one, do you still have the note? God, I wish you had the note.
Unfortunately I don't.
Yeah.
But I do have it blazoned on my mind.
Exactly right. And I think one of the things that is really key about that is, as a parent, your kids love you no matter who you are, right? And that is a gift that if you're not careful, you can piss away.
100%.
Right?
Yeah.
Right.
And that love was such a compelling agent in those moments, because I had yet to experience the love of the Father.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
But knowing that my daughters were very small, they were 3 years old and apple in my eye, right?
Yeah.
The little baby in my wife's belly.
Yeah.
That I was now facing this unbelievable conclusion to the matter, which was I'm going to do a lot of time.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah. You were looking at 20 years, I think.
85.
85 years.
Yeah,
okay.
because it was 4 different counties.
Got it. Okay.
And each county was trying to break me off like 21 or 22 years apiece.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So it was like 85 years.
They all wanted their pound.
They all wanted their pound of flesh. Absolutely. And they deserved it.
Okay.
100%.
Okay.
But, so I was 35.
Right.
Right. Do the math.
Yeah. Oh, you'd still be in prison today.
Today.
Yeah. You ultimately plead guilty, correct?
I do.
Yeah. And you get sentenced to federal prison?
So the Fed stepped in. So I went from 85 years and the Fed stepped in to do this amazing thing where they bundled them all up in one package.
Okay.
I never forget when my federal court-appointed attorney showed up and told me who she was and what was happening. And I was so confused. And she said, trust me, this is good.
Okay.
This is way better than if they all individually prosecuted you.
For sure.
And so I immediately went overnight from 85 to 16 years.
Okay.
Because the high end of the sentencing guidelines was 16.
Right.
So that was massive.
For sure.
That was like, wow. Now, I mean, that's actually like light at the end of the tunnel stuff.
Right. You can actually have a life.
Up until that moment, I was like, this is a death sentence.
Yeah.
Even if half, right? Even if I would have done half at 85, I probably would have died in there.
For sure.
Right?
For sure. So where did you actually serve time?
I actually did I had to go do a state term as well for a house burglary in Gridley.
Okay.
I was there, but I didn't do it.
Okay.
And the guy that did it had 2 strikes. And they knew who did it. The police knew, and they wanted him.
Okay.
Okay. But I didn't give up his name because I did the math and I thought, well, I don't have any strikes. He's got 2 strikes, and a strike for him, a third would be, a strike.
Exactly.
And I did, so I took it. But I was there at the scene, but I didn't do it. But they caught that some of the items that he had taken from the house were in my Suburban.
Got it.
So
that's how they connect you.
That's how they connected with me.
Okay.
With it. So I ended up doing a state term for that, but they ran it consecutive with the other term. So I went to High Desert, did 2 years. So I ended up doing 57 months total for all of it.
Okay.
Okay, because it was the crime was in the commission of with a note.
Yeah.
Okay, and also I was never threatening.
Right.
So that was actually a factor.
I understand that.
Yeah.
Right.
And so
mitigating factor.
Yeah, exactly. Because the judge actually talked about that because they called me a gentleman bank robber because I was very polite and I wasn't trying to be rude. And I was telling one lady was shaking real bad and I was like, it's going to be okay. We're fine. I'm not here to hurt anybody. I just got a dope problem and I need some money.
Yeah.
Right. So, but they considered all that. So I ended up getting 57 months for all of it.
Amazing.
So that's life changing.
For sure.
Yeah.
So at some point, I mean, you have this epiphany, if you will, sitting in the front seat of your Suburban, looking at the note from your son saying, "I love you, Daddy." The cops pointing guns at you. And that seems to be the start of the change. Is that a fair statement?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. And so you're sitting in jail, prison, doing 57 months. Are you planning how you're going to pull out of this while you're there?
So for the first year, I was in High Desert State Prison.
Yeah.
And that was not fun.
Okay.
At all.
Okay.
I mean, that is a very, very intense, harsh environment.
Okay.
Level 4 yard, very intense. And I had to deal with my own shame, guilt, condemnation, reconciling, coming to terms with what I did. My wife was still out on the streets using. She was in active use. The baby had been born. He was a boy. He was healthy, but she was still in active use. I knew that. So I had to come to terms because I was the one that not only introduced Maria to the methamphetamine, but I was also the one that introduced her to the needle.
Got it.
So she was still out using.
Yeah.
So I had to come to terms with that. And how that started happening was I started slowly but surely developing more and more of a working relationship with God and reading the Bible and then determining, okay, now I know I got this block of time and I know I'm getting out. Mm-hmm. So what do I do with this time? So I started developing a plan.
Okay.
And it started growing.
Okay. So what's the plan?
The plan was to come out better, the best I've ever been, mind, body, and soul.
Okay.
Right. And so the plan was I want to come home and I want to be a good husband. I want to be a good provider for my family. I want to be a good dad. I want to be sober. Right.
Yeah.
So the first year was like a year of cleaning out the cobwebs.
Okay.
Because my mind was so compounded and abused with the chemical dependency that there's a reset that has to happen. So there's a reset that has to happen. And so that took a while to get there. But the plan was, hey, I'm going to come out best I can, mind, body, and soul. And that's what I determined to do. And I just started working toward it every day.
Okay.
Every day.
And did you get serious about recovery at that point?
My recovery.
In terms of drug addiction?
Yes.
Yeah.
My recovery.
Your recovery. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So when I got to the federal prison system, they offered up a program called RDAP, which stands for Residential Drug and Alcohol Program.
Okay.
With the promise that you could potentially get up to a year off your date. And I only had 18 months left to go, or 19 or 20 months, I can't remember. But I thought, man, if I get a year off, that'd be crazy. Well, sure. I found out quickly I was not even eligible because bank robbery, even with a note, is still considered a crime of intimidation.
Okay.
Okay. So you're automatically disqualified. And the counselor said to me, well, you could do the class if you want. And it was a 9-month in-house rehabilitation program. So I chose to do it. I opted in.
Okay.
I was resistant at first because it was a lot of secular psychology and I wasn't too interested in that.
Okay.
I was more interested into a holistic approach but what I ended up learning from that, because it taught like rational thinking, cognitive behavior, these modules, right? It was like behavior modification therapies, right? And it taught you journaling and it taught you processing and it taught you introspective analysis and all these things about how to analyze and identify the areas that you need to work on. That was a game changer. That was a game changer. My own recovery.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. So the program had value. It worked.
Completely. I use those tools every single day today.
Amazing.
Every single day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we offer some of those programs in our jail as well as our ACS program.
I know you do. And just keep doing it, because even if you think that it's not working, even if you don't see, trust me, seeds will be planted.
Somewhere down the road.
I promise.
I love it.
Yep.
I love it. All right. So you get out.
Yeah.
And now you got to reunite with your family, and there's a whole mess there that's got to be cleaned up, right?
Yep.
Yeah. How'd that go?
So I get out, and that's when I learned that Maria was still in active use.
Okay.
And she had switched from street drugs back to she had a provider that was giving her fentanyl and stuff like that, and she had figured out how to use those things via the needle.
Yeah.
And so I came home. They were living in subsidized housing. They were on welfare, cash aid, food stamps. She was on SSI, living in subsidized housing, like I said. So everything was kind of set up. It would have been like, there was no need. I mean, the rent was like $80 a month.
Yeah.
Everything was paid for. Okay. And so I came home to this mess. I find my kids hanging on.
Yeah.
I had lost them to CPS. Thank God her mom and dad stepped in and took them.
Okay.
And then she regained them, but she was still in active use. So I came home to this mess where she's in active use. She's pretty much incapacitated due to the drugs every day. And so I lived with her like that for 2 years while she used.
Okay.
Every day. She was shooting up drugs every day, and I lived with her, and I never used.
Wow. You were able to stay clean and sober despite having that.
I was completely done.
Okay.
Totally done.
Okay.
Like there was no going back. When I walked out the prison gate, there were so many people that were like, "Are you going to use?" And I'm like, no, absolutely not.
Okay.
I had lost the appetite for it, the taste for it. In fact, it had become like, it seems even foreign to think about doing it.
Interesting. Yeah. So it takes 2 years before she's ready to start getting.
Yep. And then she has a moment where she, it's like a dual moment that happens. She actually did too much of opiates, too much fentanyl, and she got cotton fever at the same time.
Oh.
So she was like overdosing, and she had cotton fever at the same time.
What is cotton fever?
Cotton fever is when you draw drugs up to and so if you inject some of that in your bloodstream, it makes you very, very sick because it's a foreign.
Ah, got it. So it's actually a cotton fiber particle. Yeah. Okay.
It makes you very sick.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so it gives you, it's like flu-like symptoms.
Got it.
Shaking, sweating, fever, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah. And so that was a catalyst to her.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I had been trying, like, don't get me wrong, there was moments that were very contentious. One time I took a little kit and I threw it out the window and it shattered and all over the driveway. And then, and she ran out there and grabbed it. There was very contentious moments. Some days she would tell me, leave, me and the kids were better off without you. And I'd say, no, you're my wife. And no, you're not better off without me. And the next day she'd say, leave, take the kids. You guys are better off without me. And I'd say, no, you're my wife. You're their mother. We need you. And you're going to get through this. You are going to get through this. I promise you, you're going to break this.
Yeah.
And, but so she had this moment, and I remember standing there, and she was on the bed, and it was dark in the room, and the door was open, and the light coming in from behind me. So my shadows being broadcast on the bed, and she's under the blankets. And I just said, Maria, I don't know what to do. I can't do any more for you, but I love you. And I hope you can break this up, but you got it. This is it. Mm-hmm. And that was it. She decided that was it. And so she went through that.
Wow.
Started withdrawing. And then a few nights later, she woke me up at about 3 a.m. I was sleeping on the couch, and she wanted to know more about the Bible and God and his redemption. And she asked me to guide her through some of the scriptures that had helped me.
Yeah.
And because I at the very core of this story is this core, you call it the road to redemption. Really, it's the road of healing, restoration, redemption, pulling you out of the pit of despair and establishing you on something other than what you knew. And so God was the catalyst for that for me, and faith.
Yeah.
Knowing that something greater existed and I could march toward that. And I kept telling her that. So she asked those questions, and slowly but surely she got better and better and better. And now she's got 9 years clean and sober.
That's amazing.
Yeah. She's a case manager at the Orville Rescue Mission.
Right.
Helping people that were in the very same position she was in.
That is absolutely amazing. This whole story is just incredible. And I love it for a lot of different reasons, because it shows that, man, there's a way to get through that if you just are persistent. But I also love that love. That's a love story right there, man, that you just talked about. The fact that you're willing to just stick with her, knowing that you had already, in essence, slayed those dragons.
Yeah.
And had a lot of people would have gone, hey, I'm no longer about that and I'm going to move on. But you stayed there with her until she was able to slay the dragon on her own, right?
Well, how could I abandon her? She's my bride.
I know, but so many people do. You know, a lot of people do.
I know.
Yeah.
But she, but in all the dysfunctionality that she was in herself, she rode with me the whole time.
Yeah.
That I was down.
Yeah.
She supported me all those years of me acting crazy as heck.
Yeah.
She was still there. So it's like, so how could I not fight for her cause?
Yeah, I realize that.
You know?
So at some point, I mean, you pull yourself out and you become a business owner.
Yeah. So that was another thing that I determined. So it was like, okay, so what are my options, right? I know how to install flooring.
Yeah.
And so I determined that, well, I don't want to go on the road and drive truck because I've been away from home for so long. And I knew I could get a truck driving job easy.
Yeah.
But I wanted to be near my kids.
Yeah.
And I knew that going and getting like a regular 9 to 5, like I certainly couldn't become a sheriff, right?
Yeah, right.
Although I wish I would have. I wish when I was earlier I would have. But anyway, then I also knew that I could probably get a contractor's license eventually, but that would be a bunch of hoops to jump through. Sure. So I thought, well, what are my options? And I just decided I was going to start a carpet cleaning company and build my own job.
Yeah.
And so that's what I did.
Yeah. And it's taken off and you're still running that today. Exactly.
And when we're done with this, I'm going to clean carpet.
I love that. Yeah. I love that. Still working hard.
Yep.
And then some point you decide you're going to run for city council.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
How did that happen?
So it's, when was that? 2022. Yeah. Early 2022. And I'm approached by several people because they had just drawn the district maps.
Okay.
And lo and behold, my house on Bird Street, downtown Orville, is right in the middle of District F.
Yeah.
With no representation.
Okay.
And so I was approached and asked, hey, would you consider, doing this? And I laughed because I said, you do realize my criminal history, right? And they're like, yeah, but we think you would probably be good because of what you've done so far with your life and the way you are proactive in the recovery community and church and community and your family and all, and we think you would be a good candidate. And I said, I'll think about it. And so I prayed about it, asked my wife, asked my kids. They all said, sure, go for it. And so we decided to go ahead and throw the name in the hat. Remember when you called me, you said you got a crazy idea? Remember?
Yeah,
I got a crazy idea.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think it's crazy. A podcast is an awesome idea. But that was like one of those crazy ideas. And it was like, well, let's try.
Yeah.
And so I decided right then and there, okay, well, I'm not going to run from my past. I'm going to be completely transparent and address it on the front of everything.
Yeah.
And so I did. And I campaigned. I went door to door. I knocked on 1,800 doors 3 times.
Wow.
During that campaign season. And we prevailed.
How have people reacted once they figured out that you had a criminal past that you had to overcome?
Incredibly charitably.
Wow.
Like loving.
Good.
Some people, there are some people in the community that think that, guys like me are not redeemable. And they'll tell you. Yeah. And that's fine. That's and the beautiful thing about America is that the First Amendment protects those rights. And not only that, but I would protect the right to say that about me.
For sure. 100%.
Because that's their right. And so, but some people give me a little bit of grief, but by and large, the bulk of it is nothing but positive. And we got a solid movement of incredibly positive people working towards some great things in Orville. Yeah,
and I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But I'll tell you, I'm glad to hear that because as a person who is responsible for running a correctional facility, I'm often I think about what is our goal here, and certainly, they're part of having a jail is incapacitation. You've got people who are not at the point that you were at that are going to continue to go out and victimize people. And at some point, you just got to hold on to them to keep them from wreaking havoc in the community until they come to that point, right? Yep. But the end goal ultimately is to hope that people find the pathway that you found, because all I'm doing if I'm warehousing people is just preventing, I'm not solving the problem. I'm not enhancing public safety if it's just turning these people loose again to go back out and victimize people, right?
Yep.
And so that's what I loved about this story, which is, hey, there is a way for this to work, but accountability is part of that, right?
Oh, man. If you don't have accountability, then what do you have?
Yeah.
And if you're not willing to subject yourself to accountability, then you're not willing to essentially play by the rules.
Yeah.
Right? So what you're describing, if you just warehouse these people, is just giving them a timeout, essentially, and then they go right back out onto the ball field, right?
And victimize somebody.
They victimize, exactly. Yeah. And as you know, jail or prison, both are pretty much the same.
Yeah.
They could be either a catalyst and a place for relaunch, or they could be almost like a criminal college.
Correct.
Yeah.
You
like go in there and get further educated.
Yeah.
And so I chose to, after years of in and out, that last one, it was like, I'm done. I'm not running around with the homeboys, how prison politics are, how they do it. I wouldn't do any of this. I'm done with all this.
Yeah.
Because so I had to make it a determined purpose every day to, the Bible says, like Paul wrote and said, I beat my flesh into subjection every single day.
Okay.
Meaning I'm not going to let my flesh and its desires rule and reign over me anymore.
Right.
And that's what I was determined to do. I wanted a different outcome, and I knew the outcome was going to have to walk through the valley of the shadow of death.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
Because if I wanted the mountain high moment, I got to walk through this.
Exactly.
Right. The valley of dry bones. I got to get through there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I was just determined. I was extremely focused, because when they gave me that 57 months, I was like, this is my redemption moment.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just banged on the table.
No, you're good.
Are we running over on time?
You're fine. Don't worry about a thing.
Am I talking too much?
No, not at all. Not at all. You're good to go. We get to decide how long these are, and this is a great conversation. So we're good. So I want to go back to that whole accountability, the redemption, your understanding, because you were a big supporter of Proposition 36, which was the proposition that undid some of the more negative impacts brought about by Proposition 47. And I think a lot of people would go, hey, somebody who has suffered through addiction, who has been homeless, who has been to jail, who's been to prison, might not be a strong advocate for accountability, a strong advocate for rolling back some of the aspects of Proposition 47. But you were on the forefront of that whole thing.
Yeah, and thank you for helping me in that charge too, because I asked you if I could co-labor with you in the effort to get that done, and you were more than willing to allow me to help facilitate some of those things that we did, and then you jumped right on board. We came together, and what an amazing result!
It was amazing. It was. I agree.
And so, go ahead.
Why were you so passionate?
Well, because I think that in today's generation, and unfortunately, that things like Prop 47, they helped foster a attitude of entitlement amongst a bunch of individuals that otherwise should be held accountable.
Okay.
Like when you remove like punishments for drug possession or retail theft, if you raise the threshold of what constitutes a felony from X to this, and then you lower the threshold of what constitutes like possession and all that, then what do you think is going to happen? And then, so let me tell you a story. There was a guy, and I'll his name will remain out, but you know this guy because he was at one of our events. Okay. And he came up and he had face tattoos.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
4 days after I paroled
from
prison, I'm walking down Oro-Quincy Highway on my way. It's 4:30 in the morning, and I'm walking down Oro-Quincy Highway from my aunt's house because I didn't parole to Maria's house.
Yeah.
I paroled to my aunt's for a few weeks while probation did whatever they did. And I got a job installing hardwood in Sacramento.
Yeah.
I called some of my old flooring contacts. Yep, come on, we got you. Meet me at the Jerry's Market at 5 o'clock in the morning. So I'm walking down Oro-Quincy Highway, and I hear a car coming the other way, and it's got some deep bass. Yeah. And I could hear it coming, and I'm thinking, oh man, please not let be somebody I know.
Yeah.
The car blows by me going this way, and I hear it. I see the brake lights come on, everything lights up, and I hear it hit the gravel, and it turns around. And I think, oh man, I know somebody. It was that guy.
Okay.
It was the guy that came up to the Prop 36 signature event.
I did the signature. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So he rolls up on me. He rolls down the window, and he looks at me and he goes, "What's up, bro? You're out?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I just got out." He reaches under the seat, and he produces about a pound of meth and puts it on the passenger seat. And he reaches back under and he pulls out a pistol and puts it on the seat.
Okay.
And this is what he said: "That's on me, bro. Get back to work."
Wow.
And I told him, "No, I'm cool, man. I'm good. I'm straight. I'm not doing it anymore." He said, No. You don't understand. They just passed Prop 47. We could do whatever we want now.
Wow.
Yeah. Right?
Yes.
And I said, "No, thank you. I'm good." And he goes, "All right, bro. If you ever need anything, let me know." And he took off.
Okay.
Okay. So that's the guy that showed up and told you, "I want to sign this."
Fast forward. Exactly. And I remember that. I know exactly, because he walked up and is like, "Man, I know this guy has done time," right? Yeah.
All kinds.
All kinds.
Yep.
But he had come to a point in his life where he said, enough is enough.
Enough is enough. That guy's still doing well, by the way. He's got a new baby.
I love that.
His wife are doing great. I talk to him often, okay?
That is fantastic.
Yeah, I love him dearly. But anyway, the point is that you got to kind of touch the flame to know when something's really off.
Yeah.
And that was something off on that. And so for me to get behind that, it's like I could clearly see that this is detrimental to our communities.
Exactly.
Clearly.
Yeah.
right? We need accountability.
Yeah.
Like somehow we went from an age of accountability to no accountability, and then we watched it explode, right?
Yeah.
Homelessness, retail theft, crime, drug overdoses, it just went nuts.
Yes.
Right? Add fentanyl into that mix. Oh
Yes.
my gosh.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Prop 36 needed to be there because the fentanyl dealers also need to be held accountable.
Agreed.
Right? And so that's why I was so passionate about it, because if you're not a society that has rule and order, then what are you? You're not a society at all.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so I used to be very anti-police. Now I'm totally pro-police, you know, because I absolutely respect what you guys do. And also Prop 36 helps you too.
It does. Yeah. It does. What I love about you talk about being pro-police, but I also like the opportunity to show people that as a cop, I recognize someone who's turned their life around, and I see where there's value in us collaborating and working together for the greater good.
And you did, and you still do.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and we'll start to close it out, but one of the things that you're working really hard at is trying to bring economic development to Oroville, to, as you call it, vision casting, I think. How can Oroville reach its potential, right? And the idea is if Oroville can reach it, then other communities within Butte County can reach their potential and we can be better.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
So why are you so passionate about that?
Well, the Oroville is a gem.
I agree.
And it's a diamond in the rough. Yeah. And I think Oroville sits at the precipice of some great opportunity growth in development. And we've got lots of land. We got beautiful geographic features, river, hill, Table Mountain, lakes.
Yeah.
We got all this great stuff, right? And I think if I could summarize Oroville, it's unfulfilled potential. Okay. And I think the time for a new wave of leadership to come in and try to make a move that is common ground, middle of the road, because that's something that I've realized. And everybody that knows me knows that I'm registered as a Republican. I'm definitely right leaning in my ideologies for sure.
Sure.
But I also understand that I represent 3,300 people in my district. That it's a multi-eclectic melting pot of people.
Agreed.
So I've got agnostics, atheists, Muslims, you name it. I got whatever. I've got everybody in between.
Yeah.
And so people that want to have alternative lifestyles, whatever, right? So I have to represent them from the middle of the road, right?
Agreed.
Because what good would it be if I only represented from the boxes that I check?
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And so campaigning and knocking on doors. I had many, many conversations about what that looks like. What does it look like? What's your vision for it? And so I started actually formulating that vision at these doors. And what I started noticing was that if you're at a Democrat's door, an independent's door, or a Republican's door, you know what? They all want the same thing.
Yeah.
They want the same thing. They may have slightly different ideas of how to get there.
Yeah.
Okay. But so I started realizing that there was unbelievable value in bringing these people together.
Sure.
And so we started our coalition. You've spoke at it. I'm hoping you'll speak at it again.
Love to.
And you've given us tours at the jail, which has been unbelievably beneficial. I can't wait to tour the new facility.
Yes.
But this group of individuals is what I call the movers and shakers in Oroville, the people that believe that the best days of Oroville are, in fact, ahead of it.
Yeah.
And so economic development, fair market value housing, family-centric and entertainment. That hospital is going to open up soon, I hope, but that's a huge addition.
Yeah.
Right? We've got ample land, opportunity. We could have manufacturing. We could have all kinds of stuff going on. Like I said, this is Oroville's time to shine.
Yeah.
I believe that's going to happen. 2025, 2026, rolling into that year. Watch what's going to happen. I believe that the best days of Oroville are yet ahead, and that we as a people can wrap ourselves around that, because not only for this generation, but to protect the generation that came before us and the more vulnerable generation, the next one that's coming up for the future.
Yeah.
So that's my mission. So, I'm on city council right now, and, my term's up in next year.
I try to govern from the middle as well, taking into account the views of the entire constituency. Yeah. And so sometimes that means in terms of making decisions and leading as opposed to what your own personal paradigm is, you got to take into account, other people's views and figure out how to go. And I think that is an important thing. I also think it's important to acknowledge that a healthy, happy, prosperous community is a community that is directly related to public safety, because public safety is a whole big part of that whole thing, right? Right.
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
All right, so let's bring this home, because one of the things that I really find amazing is you are now part of our jail ministry program, right?
Yeah.
So you still go to the Butte County Jail, but it's
Yes.
in a different capacity now.
Absolutely. I get to leave.
You get to leave. You
Yeah.
get to leave.
On my own free will.
And yeah, but the work that you're doing in there, why is that so important to you?
Well, and thank you for that, by the way, because you've been a huge help in facilitating that for sure. And I really, really appreciate that. I respect you so much for giving me the opportunity to go in there. I was just there last Thursday.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I was just, and I'll be there this Thursday.
Good,
too.
good.
The reason why is because I want to communicate to these men that there's hope is not lost.
Yep.
You know, that if I could do it, anybody could do it.
Yep.
If a knucklehead like me, who was in the depths of hell and depravity in my mind and in my life, and literally threw away my entire life on the altar of sacrifice to my own selfish needs.
Yeah.
I threw away my wife. I threw away my kids. I did it all because I was just trying to satisfy my own desire, right?
Yeah.
If I could pull out of that, okay, in this road to redemption, talk about the God, healing, restoration, all those things that happen, restoration of mind. If I could do that, then I want to walk into one of your pods, whether it be Charlie's side or the other side, I don't care which side.
Right.
And I want to be able to tell the man that's standing in front of me, if I could do it, you could do it. I promise you can. It's going to take hard work. It's going to take determination. There will be blood, there will be sweat, there will be tears. Okay? There will be all those things involved. But you was mentioned at the beginning of this podcast that anything that's worth doing is worth doing, especially if it's hard.
Correct.
And a journey of 1,000,000,000 steps starts with what? One step.
Yeah.
Right? So never be afraid to take that next step. And it's all so my encouragement to these men and anybody in life is like, how do you get through life? By taking the next right step.
Yeah.
The next right thing, doing the next right thing, the next right thing. And before you know it, you've got 10,000 next right things and you have the result. It's like plowing a field, right? The happy farmer gets up in the morning and plows and plants and plows and plants and does it over and over again. He waters, and one day he turns around and there's a crop.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's what life is all about. Yeah. You know, so it's not impossible. If I could do it, anybody could do it.
Yeah. Amazing. And I can't think of a better person to convey that message to those people who are in that despair that you described. And I think that by doing that, you are directly enhancing public safety in Butte County, which is why I wanted to have you on this podcast so that people could understand where you're at, where you've been, where you're going, and also how important this collaboration is. So, my friend, thank you very much. It was a huge honor to have you here. I think this is going to be a fantastic episode.
It's my privilege.
Yeah.
It's my honor, and I'm so thankful. And I honor you, Sheriff. I really do. We are a blessed community to have a man of action like you and a man of forward thought, and that does govern it from the way you do. We are blessed, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it. So if you found this podcast informative, like, follow, and share. That helps us expand the number of people who get to hear this incredible information. If you'd like to recommend a topic or a guest that we can explore, you can email me at sheriffsmike@buttecounty.net. Thank you for listening. And until next time, stay safe, stay informed, and as always, you're clear to talk.